The reason I wanted to talk about this today is because funds, monies needed for down payment and or closing costs or even reserves, always a timely topic, always a hot topic. Okay. And so I wanted to come at it a little different, as because as you all know, I'm always talking about different down payment assistance sources, but you may be someone that cannot access those types of funds or don't want to because of some of the fees and or interest rates that are associated with said funds, right? So we're going to come at this a little different and talk about the following, right? We're going to talk about different sources that you may be able to tap into that you can borrow against, collateralize. Okay. So borrowed funds secured by financial assets. So we're going to talk about some financial assets sources, real estate, and or personal property that can be an acceptable source for funds that you may need for down payment, closing cost, and or reserves. Okay. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number one, financial assets. Okay. What do we mean when I say, or what do I mean when I say financial assets? I'm speaking of savings accounts, right? Checking savings accounts, certificate of deposit, CDs, stocks, bonds, 401ks, and life insurance. Okay, that's a big topic now. Everybody's talking about whole lot, some type of life insurance product that you could become the bank and possibly tap into. Well, you can also gain or tap into those things as far as collateralizing, okay, these sources for the purpose of down payment, closing cost, and even sometimes reserves. Okay. And so keep in mind that these are some viable sources that you may have available to you that you don't necessarily have to liquidate. Okay. Might not want to liquidate these things, but can I borrow against it? Okay. And so that's what I mean when I say financial assets. Okay. So before we go any further, and I'll say this a couple of times, obviously, there's a proper way to document these things. Okay. There's a proper documentation process as far as valuation is concerned, and how things must be done. That's why it's very important for you to deal with the right team member, okay, the right lender, someone you know, like, and trust. More importantly, someone that knows how to properly navigate these waters. Okay. So that's number one, financial assets in the form of savings, certificate of deposit, stocks, bonds, 401ks, and or life insurance. Pardon me. Number two, okay, real estate. A lot of you guys have access to real estate in the form of land, raw land, or something with property on it. Okay. And if you didn't know, you can possibly tap into said real estate to help you with a purchase of another property. All right. Um, so that you can either come up with a down payment and or closing costs and or reserve requirements that you may have to have, right? And typically when we're dealing with real estate, we're dealing with real estate in one of these vehicles, right? 1031 transaction or 1031 exchange, HELOCs, home equity lines of credit, a bridge loan, short-term loan, right? And or loans on real estate that you already own as a borrower. Okay. Again, real estate is number two, real estate owned by you, the borrower. You can securitize, borrow money against one of these vehicles if you have access to them. Okay. For the purpose of you securing additional real estate and taking care of the down payment, closing costs, and potentially the reserve requirements that you may have to have for whatever your individual situation is, right? So, again, I've said this a couple of times, but there's, five types of loans, if you will. I call it five, maybe six, depending on how you look at it, right? So we'll call it five. You have conventional loans in the form of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Those are the two government sponsored entities that offer financing for people to be able to secure home loans: FHA, VA, and USDA. So up until this point, conventional loans, okay, FHA, VA, and USDA, they will all, okay, allow you to use the first two types. Once you collateralize them and do it properly, you can use it for down payment, closing cost, and reserves. Okay. So if you're using financial assets, right? If you're using real estate, okay. You know what? I take that back. I take that back. We can use the four types, but FHA can only be used for down payment and closing costs, right? No reserve requirements. So financial assets, real estate, once you properly document and securitize one of those types of sources, and it's done properly, could be used for down payment, closing costs, and reserves for conventional loans, VA loans, USDA loans, right? But when it comes to FHA loans, down payment and closing costs only. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So as we move forward, if anyone has any questions, comments, or likes to uh, interact, feel free to do so. I always want to be inviting and allow you to do so. Right. So now the last type, okay, category, if you will, of things that you can securitize is what we would call personal property. Okay. Now, this is good for conventional loans, VA, and USDA. No bueno for FHA. This is a no go for FHA. You can't do anything with personal property, right? But with the other loan types, what are some of the things that we might consider personal property? Autos, cars, automobiles, artwork. Funny enough, years ago, I had a situation where we were able to use a piece of art, okay, for it. The person borrowed money against it, right, for the purpose of down payment and closing costs. It can be done, but there's, as everything in life, there's a proper way to do so. But personal property, autos, cars, artwork, furniture, collectibles, recreational vehicles, and motorcycles, right? So those things might be able to be used by you to secure the funds that you need to secure the additional real estate, right? And as I said before, can be used for down payment, closing costs, and reserves. And personal property can only be used, right, to collateralize, if you will, for this purpose, for conventional loans, VA loans, and USDA loans, right? So, last couple of things on all of these loans when it comes to the documentation. One thing that you must understand is that the funds, okay, cannot come from any interested party to the transaction. Okay. Now, on FHA loans, sometimes a realtor, interested party, can use some of their commission, right, to go towards closing costs and things of that nature for either themselves or their buyer. But for pretty much every other scenario, whenever dealing with one of these types of categories, you cannot have an interested party, right, secure or collateralize one of these types of um, either personal property, financial asset, or real estate. That's a no go, right? So that is the nature of the video. Again, trying to give you guys a different insight, a little different from what everybody else is talking about, and give you some more options that you might have not considered when trying to overcome that hurdle for down payment and closing costs. And hopefully, I've turned you on to some other sources that you don't necessarily have to liquidate. You may not want to sell these things, but if they're an asset, they hold value, and you could collateralize them and do it properly. That may be the answer to your down payment, closing costs, and or reserve requirements. So as I get ready to wrap up, if you need help understanding all of the nuances that come with securing residential real estate. If you say, hey, Robert, man, this stuff is too complicated, I love it. That's what I do. Okay. Reach out. All right. Let's have a conversation to see if one of the sources that I may have mentioned or a source that I didn't mention, if that might be something that you might be able to use to secure what it is that you need for down payment, closing costs, and possibly reserves for your next residential real estate transaction. Would love to help you out. Links in the description if you want to schedule a consultation or if you just want to reach out, we'll work it out ultimately to help you realize whatever your most immediate residential real estate financing needs are. So there you have it, guys. My time is up, but I thank you for yours. Hey, as I always say, let's be good to one another. Let grace abound. And until the next time, peace. You guys be blessed.